As you can see, I'm not in my normal spot, and that's because I'm actually on a cruise ship with the most beautiful lady on a mini vacation. Still, there's a lot to discuss, starting with Intel's upcoming CPU that you do not want to buy, more FPS, AMD failed to do it, and RX 8000 specs are in. Okay, it's news time, and first up for today, Intel's upcoming special edition 14900KS is gearing up for a release. And the reason we know this is because, according to iLeak-VN, the CPU is already in distributor/retailer warehouses where it's awaiting for the official sale embargo to live. And as you can see up here, they actually shared the retail box of the upcoming CPU, and there's nothing special about it. I definitely haven't been a big fan of Intel's KS models, but at least a couple of them came with some pretty cool retail boxes, but they've pretty much given up on that as of now. Either way, we also have specs as well as a potential price. As you can see down here, the 14900KS is of course a 24-core CPU with up to 6.2 GHz boost. Now, you might notice that that boost is nowhere near as great as the difference between the 12900KS to the 13900KS, being 500 MHz versus 200 MHz. But of course, as I've mentioned multiple times before, Intel's 14th gen CPUs are essentially just overclocked 13th gen parts. Well, sort of. They're a bit refined, but definitely nothing that I would call a new generation. And that's why they really weren't able to push these too much further. With that said, unfortunately, they're still going to be pushing the price significantly further. As you can see down here, it says similarly to the past KS releases, the new SKU is expected to be 18 to 25% more expensive. According to iLeak-VN, the price in Vietnam is around $765, which is 30% more expensive. Now, this is obviously more of an early kind of release number, likely, at least from what it sounds like here, so I wouldn't really take this as the final pricing, but at the same time, with it being right around what we've seen before, I wouldn't be too surprised. Basically, with the 14900KS, Intel is essentially giving you less for more, or even if it's around the same price increase that we've seen before, it'd still be giving you less for the same price. Either way, definitely not something I'd suggest anyone buy. And next up for today, if you follow the channel, and of course, if you don't, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so you can stay up to date on all the new PC hardware releases. Either way, if you have been following the channel, you know that I've been discussing this new upcoming release from Microsoft called DirectSR. Now, originally, we were sort of thinking that this was similar to this right here that we've seen, AutoSR, that effectively made us think that Microsoft was adding capabilities for super resolution at the click of a button. Now, they may still actually be doing that, but at least according to this, that's not what DirectSR is. This right here is a post by Microsoft themselves where they quickly sort of go over what to expect with DirectSR, and this is likely because everyone was getting excited and thinking that it was something like this, but unfortunately it isn't, but it is still good news. As you can see right down here, it says this API enables multi-vendor SR through a common set of inputs and outputs, allowing a single code path to activate a variety of solutions, including NVIDIA DLSS Super Resolution, AMD Fidelity FX Super Resolution, and Intel XeSS. DirectSR will be available soon, and the Agility SDK is a public preview. Basically, what all of this means is that this isn't actually some kind of new super resolution. Instead, it's basically an API that allows game developers to write code for all of the different super resolutions sort of at once. I'm sure it's more complicated than that, but at least from what we're hearing, that's basically what Microsoft is wanting to do. They're wanting to make it easier for developers to write code for all of these different super resolution technologies rather than having to write a ton of code for each one. They can sort of just write it in this API, and at least from what this sounds like, it'll make it work with all of them. And while it isn't a new super resolution, it is still great news because it should mean that developers have an easier time to add all the different super resolutions to their game. Therefore, it should come to more games, and in the games where they have one, it should be much easier to go ahead and include the rest. At least this is what it's sounding like to me. And next up, I actually have some bad news. For those who don't know, HDMI To many, it's just a regular port. But actually, it's really overseen by sort of this conglomerate of a bunch of tech companies that oversee it all, called the HDMI Forum. And basically what they do is they come together and determine what the next HDMI is, as well as what can support it. And one of the main issues is that HDMI is not open source, and because of that, it's really hard to add it to things like Linux. Fortunately, AMD has been trying, at least according to them, for the last 3 years to bring HDMI 2.1. I think 4K 120Hz is basically required. If you're wanting to use HDMI, you need HDMI 2.1. Well, the consortium has denied updates that AMD has been working on to bring it to Linux. As you can see right here, this is from an AMD engineer. It says, quote, "The HDMI Forum has rejected our proposal. Unfortunately, at this time, an open source HDMI 2.1 implementation is not possible without running afoul of the HDMI Forum requirements." Basically, AMD tried and unfortunately failed. Now, of course, thank you AMD for at least giving the attempt, but for now, if you want these higher refresh rates at 4K, things like that, you're gonna have to stick to DisplayPort. And lastly for today, we have a very interesting new update from Red Gaming Tech on AMD's upcoming RDNA 4 GPUs. As you can see right here, so far he has 2 Navi GPUs upcoming, Navi 48 and Navi 44. Now, what's wild is that the higher end one is actually Navi 48. Typically, the lower the number, the higher in the GPU. But, at least according to this, Navi 48 is the higher end GPU, while Navi 44 is the lower end one. And starting off with specs, we have Navi 48, according to him, gets 32 workgroup processors. So those are your cores right there, 64 megabytes of Infinity Cache, and a 256-bit GDDR6 bus. Now, that GDDR6 and the 256-bit is one of the differences that we're seeing from what he originally heard to what he's hearing now, and that easily could just be that AMD has ultimately changed their minds. Before, we were looking at a shorter memory bus at 192-bit, but GDDR7. Now it's looking like they're going a little bit wider, but at GDDR6. Next, we have Navi 44. This one has 16 workgroup processors, 32 megabytes of the cache, 128-bit GDDR6. Once again, that's a change from 96-bit GDDR7, so a little bit shorter of a bus, so we're going a little bit wider, but now we're moving from GDDR7 to GDDR6. And the news doesn't stop there. He also actually has some performance numbers. Starting things off with N48, you can see that according to him, it's going to be a little slower than the RX 7900 XT. But don't forget that at least according to everything we've heard, the RX 8000 series is set to be more of a mid-range series of GPUs. That is unfortunate. They aren't going to be trying to tackle the high end of things, but don't forget that them doing that actually gave us the RX 480 a while back, so this may not be all bad news, and it being slightly slower than the RX 7900 XT could end up being a great thing depending on its price. If AMD is able to get anywhere near, say, the 7800 XT, 7700 XT in price, but right around the 7900 XT's performance, that could end up still being a huge win. Finally, we have the N44, which according to this is between an RX 7600 and 7700 XT's performance. So once again, nothing to write home about, but we still could be looking at a really big winner. So while that does it for today, are you still excited for AMD's next-gen RX 8000, or are you looking more towards Nvidia simply because AMD, at least according to rumors, may not be releasing new GPUs on the high end? Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. And as always, have a great day.